Arizona buyers, I am talking to you today. This topic might feel a little bit dry, but it's really important that you understand what the statuses mean when you are looking at the MLS. So I'm specifically talking about the Arizona Regional MLS. This is going to be the greater Phoenix area. So if you are working with a real estate agent and you are looking at their portal, these statuses are for you. Now, there are two things I'm going to explain for every single status, which is what you see on screen and what it is supposed to mean, as well as what's happening off screen. Because what's happening in real life, sadly, doesn't always reflect the status that you are seeing on the computer, which is why it typically requires a call from your real estate agent to ask the listing agent some questions because you want to know what's going on with that house. So let's start with the coming soon status. Coming soon is 30 free days for any seller to start marketing, create a buzz around the house before it actually goes active. The coming soon status is only for MLS subscribers. It is a solid 30 days, but it can be activated sooner. If the listing agent does not choose a single day between 0 and 30, it auto activates as active on the 31st day. So the huge bonus about this is that sellers are not racking up days on market. They get to essentially test the market to see what buyers are thinking, how many calls they will have. When I say MLS subscribers only, this does not go out to any third-party website. So no Zillow, no Redfin, no Trulia, no Realtor.com, none of those. So if you are a buyer who's only looking at the third-party websites, this is a little bit of gold for you right here. You are missing out on the coming soon listings because if you are working with a real estate agent, you will see in your portal active and coming soon. If you are not working with a real estate agent, there's a whole list of properties that you aren't seeing. Now, coming soon isn't mandatory. It is not something that every single seller and or listing agent find valuable, but there are definitely some people who add the listing in a coming soon status. So you might want to link up with a real estate agent in the Valley if you are interested in just seeing a couple more houses, what else could be out there, because you don't have access to them right now. This takes us to the active status. The active status technically means that the house is free and available on screen. I'm laughing because off screen, it doesn't always mean that. So again, if you are a buyer, you should have your real estate agent call the listing agent to find out exactly what's going on with the house. And here's the question that your real estate agent needs to ask. Your real estate agent needs to ask the listing agent, "Hi, Susie, this is Lauren House. I'm over at Real Broker. I have a client who's interested in Unicorn Way. Do you have any offers in hand for this property?" The specific piece is in hand. Do you have any offers? Yeah, we're supposed to be getting one, or we have one, or it's just so vague. In hand. I want to know, are you currently negotiating an offer with another buyer? That's information, that's leverage, that tells us how in demand the property is. In some cases, listing agents choose not to change the status from active to under contract, even though they have a fully executed contract, because they are waiting for the buyer to submit their earnest money to the title company. And they totally can do that. The listing agent is allowed to wait and to postpone changing the status to continue having agents show that listing to buyers. Because we all know in the first 10 days of any inspection period or whatever state you're watching this in, it is a volatile time. The buyer can literally say, "I don't like where the sun is setting. I'm going to cancel the contract." And then all of a sudden the seller has to go back to the market. So the active status is very important. I should say is equally as important as calling before seeing a house. Like, in my opinion and from my experience, I like to call the listing agent before I show a house to ask them some questions. I always ask, do you have any offers in hand? I always ask, is there anything I need to know about this house? Real estate agents love to talk. Loose lips, right? A lot of times they betray their fiduciary responsibility to the seller and they over blab. They tell you, we've already had an offer, or I know the seller will drop to this price, because selfishly that listing agent, that real estate agent wants to get the house under contract and sold. The seller doesn't know what their what their real estate agent is saying to the other side, but that's why I call. Another thing that you need to look at when you are on the MLS is the days on market. So in the MLS, you will see CDOM/ADOM. The C stands for cumulative days on market. What does that mean? It means that this is how many days this listing has been on the market. It could be one real estate agent, it could be 7 real estate agents, it doesn't matter. In Arizona, the listing has to be off the MLS for a total of 45 days before that CDOM, the cumulative days on market, resets to 0. So a lot of times, and especially right now in 2026, we are seeing a house that will have 256/19. So that brings me over to the ADOM, actual days on market. That is for this specific round of the listing being live. So the 256 is the history of how long it's been on the market without a break, without a break of 45 days. The ADOM, the actual of 15 days or 20 days, whatever it says, is this real estate agent or this time that it's been active. So automatically I can see that this seller has been wanting to sell this property for quite some time and has been unsuccessful. And that's why the days on market are so important, because it really tells us where the seller's at. We assume when we see high days on market, whether it's the cumulative or the actual, there's a little bit of pain there. As I've said in other videos, every seller has carrying costs. Now, if it's a house without an HOA and they paid cash, obviously their carrying costs are much lower. It's probably pool, if that's applicable, maintenance, or yard work, if that's applicable, as well as electricity, utilities, all that kind of stuff. So there is a chance that it could be a low carrying cost, which doesn't really give that much pain. But if it's a high carrying cost, especially if it's an investor or a flipper and they need to get their money out to move on to the next project, that high days on market is very, very telling. So this brings me over to the UCB status. UCB stands for under contract/backups. Now, this is under contract. The house is technically not available. There is a contract, escrow has been opened, and title has the buyer's earnest money. I think that the MLS intended the listing agent to change the status from active to under contract/backups, which I will just call UCB because that's such a mouthful. I think that the MLS intended the status to be changed from active to UCB during the inspection period because, like I said, it's a very volatile time and every seller and every listing agent want to continue having showings to have backup offers. Backup offers are very interesting. It's very market specific. Like, we're not seeing backup offers now in June 2026. There are way too many houses out there. In Phoenix, we have 25,414 options to choose from in Maricopa County. That is an insane amount. Nobody's putting in a backup offer unless they priced it extremely low, had multiple offers, and there is a buyer who just has to have this house. Maybe, but that would definitely be the exception. So backup offers were heavily used in 2020 and 2021 when it was a seller's market and buyers were just dying to get into a house. What it does, a backup offer holds your place in line. The buyer and seller completely negotiate the entire contract, fully sign it, fully executed, but it does not go to title. And that's it. The buyer has every right to cancel that contract, to keep looking at other houses. They are not legally or financially bound to that seller just because they have a backup contract signed. So it still is a very loose parameter. It just technically holds your place in line as the buyer if there's a house that you absolutely want and the seller happens to fall out of contract. Now, the contract is extremely buyer friendly. Like I said, like the water pressure could be too low or too high and the buyer's like, oh, I'm out, even though that's totally fixable, right? Like the buyer can walk away for any reason during the inspection period. The seller, on the other hand, cannot. This is a legally binding contract that the buyer has a lot of outs on. The seller does not have any outs. The only way a seller can actually get out of a contract is by pushing the buyer away as much as possible, because they might have a backup that's better than the current offer. So let's say that a buyer is under contract on a house for $1 million. After the inspection, the buyer sends their inspection request to the seller. Well, during those 10 days that the buyer was working on their inspections, the seller received an offer for $1.1 million. And the seller's going, I can't believe I locked myself in. I want to get out of this contract. I'm done with these buyers. I'm not doing anything for them. This is a race against time that the seller has no control over. The seller is going to full-blown reject every single thing on the buyer's inspection request list, hoping that the buyer cancels and walks away and the seller can put buyer 2 into motion and actually go under contract with the buyer that's offering them more money. It doesn't always work like that. That is 100% always the trajectory of what happens. The caveat here is that when the listing agent tells buyer 1, they're not going to do anything for you because we have a backup offer, and that backup offer is more than what you are offering, and so they're not going to do anything, so take it or leave it. So now the seller is actually in a great position, because the seller has an opportunity to make more money if the buyer walks, and also has an opportunity not to fix a single thing. No credit, no repair, nothing to the current buyer. So that psychology of the listing agent telling the buyer, hey, we have a backup offer, it creates that demand, and it creates that I want what other people want and I want what I can't have, if that makes sense. That mentality typically forces the buyer to say, okay, we'll just take it. The seller doesn't have to do anything for us. It does not matter what kind of market it is. If there's 2 buyers that want a house, the seller is definitely in the driver's seat. So that is the only way out for a seller to come out of the UCB and go back to active. And a backup offer does not necessarily mean that you are tied into anything. So don't be afraid to put one in if it's a house that you really, really want. But it is very important to know that as the seller, you are in. Another thing about UCB status is that the days on market continue adding up. So if you have a contract for 30 days and the buyer decides to walk away at day 29 because they lost their job or whatever it is, we're not going to get into the earnest money conversation right now. That's a totally different video. But let's just pretend on day 29, your buyer walks. Well, now what, right? Now you as the seller, I like to go back and forth with everybody. So now the seller just added 29 more days to the days on market. You as the buyer are going to see in the public remarks, big capital letters with stars that say, ignore days on market, buyer fell out of contract, or buyer walked away, or buyer couldn't get a loan. There's always going to be a note about why the days on market are so high. I personally think that is a red flag. It causes a lot of questions, and people don't just sweep things under the rug that easily. Buyers are so smart, educated, knowledgeable. They are studying every single house, every single neighborhood. By the real estate agent just saying, ignore days on market, that causes your investigative side as the buyer to come out and say, well, what the heck what happened? So then you call your real estate agent, and your real estate agent calls the listing agent, and the listing agent's going to explain to you what happened. We don't know if that's the truth. I'm not saying that they're liars. I'm just saying it's very easy to keep things at a broad topic and not get into the nitty-gritty details to actually give a true understanding of why. I mean, the seller has a house that just fell out of contract, which means it's less marketable now and it might be worth less money. The real estate agent who represents the seller, their responsibility is to make sure that house still goes under contract and quickly and is marketable. So you as the buyer, it's so important to have your real estate agent call to find out what's going on. You want to understand. Use that to your advantage. That is what I'm going to say. The next status is pending. Pending is also under contract. I think that the MLS intended for the real estate agent to change the status from active to pending once the transaction is through the inspection period. Once we know that we're just kind of waiting to close, yes, you might have an appraisal, but once we know that the hard part is done, I think the MLS wanted the status to be changed to pending. That's not how it works in real life. In real life, the listing agent chooses if they are going to put the status as UCB or pending. The caveat for pending is that the days on market do not add up. So going back to our example, if there are 15 days on the market, and then we go under contract and have a 30-day contract, and that buyer still cancels on day 29, when the listing agent changes the pending status back to the active status, it picks up on day 15 and turns into day 16. So it makes the property, it just freezes the property, essentially is what you're doing. You're freezing time. So then now the seller has the house under contract, is not adding up days on market, and can go back scot-free to having 15 days. And it looks the listing still looks fresh. There isn't a discrepancy about why or what happened. It takes a little bit of digging because you'd have to go to the history tab as the buyer or as the real estate agent to see, has it been under contract? The days stopped, which is huge. So if you're a buyer watching this and you see a house that's pending, I still highly encourage you to ask your real estate agent to please call the listing agent to understand what's going on with the house. In my opinion, a deal is not done until it's done. That was the very first thing I ever learned in real estate. And until your first deal falls out, you don't quite understand why people say that. It does not matter what time, on what day. It can fall out at 4 p.m. before 5 o'clock on the very last day of the contract, and then it goes back to active status. Every single house that's under contract, whether it's pending or UCB status, is an opportunity. And then you have your real estate agent call every 5 days, every 10 days. Try to finagle a showing if it's a house you think you really want to see. There's so many ways to still have an opportunity at a house that's under contract, especially right now in 2026. We are seeing like between 20 and 25% of houses falling out of contract. So don't let that discourage you. Again, going after a house that's under contract is really market dependent. I'm not saying that that's something that is advice for lifetime, but it's advice for right now. It is not a no, it's just not available right now. So let's talk about expired listings. Expired listings is a house that didn't sell. Very simple. Typically that means that the contract length with the real estate agent is up. The listing agent was unable to sell the house for whatever reason. Again, a totally different video. And that's also a gold piece that you might want to take with you. If you are seeing a house that expired and you're like, gosh, I really like this house, I'd love to see it, have your real estate agent call. Better yet, have your real estate agent track down the homeowner's phone number and call directly, because then you're cutting out the real estate agent. I can't tell you how many times I have called the listing agent of an expired listing, trying to include them, trying to be ethically sound, and going to the person who has the contact, including them in the transaction. And guess what? They answer the phone and say, oh yeah, no, they're not interested in selling. Or, oh yeah, I'll call you back. Let me find out. Day 1 goes by, day 2 goes by, and I'm like, really? Like, I just told you I have somebody who's interested and you're not even going to either call the seller and or call me back to let me know if it's a yes or a no. I dig up the phone number for the homeowner. I give him a call. Hey, Mr. Seller, did Joe decide to, did you hear from your listing agent, Joe? Because I called him the other day to find out if your house was still available. Oh no, I didn't. Who are you? Do you have a buyer? Well, yes, I do. I have somebody who's actually very interested in the house, and we don't know what the future holds, but we're certainly going to ask if we can come see it. And guess what? They typically let you in. And this leads me over to canceled listings. Canceled listings are actually by the seller's choice. Typically, I guess you don't actually know who decided to cancel it, but there is a one-sided or mutual agreement for canceling the listing. And that means, again, maybe lifetime changed, maybe summer hit in Arizona, whatever it is, there's things that caused a change and that the house is no longer on the market. It didn't sell. And there are cases where a seller decides, okay, I'm not going to sell. Maybe they can't find somewhere to go, or the job fell through, or whatever it is. But this is also gold because, and I do send these expired and canceled listings to my client when we are struggling. I can also cold call the direct neighborhood around to find out if anybody is going to be thinking in the future of selling. But the expired and canceled are warmer because we know that they, at one point within the last 3 months or 6 months, wanted to sell. And that's huge. If you're a buyer, if you are a buyer and you can't find a house, have your real estate agent pull those and say, take a look. Hey, I like this house. Can we see if it's still available? Most of the time it is. So I'm going to highly suggest that you have your real estate agent call. It's a little gold nugget tip. All right, the last status in the Arizona Regional MLS is temporarily off market. It's purple and it says Tom. The Tom status is when a listing is active, but the listing comes off the market for, I don't know if there's I don't know. I need to find out. I don't know if there's a timeline on that, but it means it's still active, but there's maybe some work being done. Maybe they have relatives in town. Maybe the seller themselves are out of town and they only want to be home and available when showings are happening. Like whatever the reason is, I don't know. Again, it warrants a phone call. Have your real estate agent call the listing agent and say, hey, I have a client who's really interested in this house. You know, what's going on? Why is it temporarily off the market? And they'll let you know, oh, whatever. We went under contract and the AC needed to be fixed, so we're just taking it off the market, not to waste days on market to get it fixed, right? Like there's always a reason and they typically make sense. For the most part, the Tom status is used for direct repairs to the house because there was something unexpected that happened. So it's funny though, when you do, when a house does move to the status from active to temporarily off market, it's amazing how many buyers come out of the woodworks and they're like, Lauren, I really liked this house. I'm like, what? I have not even seen this on your list. And then all of a sudden you take it away and it becomes desirable. It's so typical, no offense. It's so typical of buyers. So I know this might have been a dry topic, but I tried to make it a little bit more interesting so that you can understand what's going on the computer screen and what's going on off the computer screen, because what's going on in real life is very different than just a simple MLS status. If you are in a different city or state other than Arizona, please ask your real estate agent what those statuses mean. And if you don't have a real estate agent, I am happy to put you in touch with one. There is a link in the description box that you can fill out, and I will put you in touch with a hidden equity agent in your city and or state. It's just important to understand, like, where's the gold in these statuses? Like, if it's active, it's not actually active because sometimes it's under contract. And if it's canceled, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily not for sale. So these are the things that you need a really hard-working real estate agent to find out for you. And like I said, you need that sleuth to come out and start finding out what's going on with the house and what's still available. So I will see you on the next video, and I really hope you can find that home, even if it's not actually active.